So I'm going to put my palms together and invite everyone to join me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahadi sanmiao sanputoche. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa. 百千万劫难遭遇，我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。 Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay, we're going to recite Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. For those of you who are in the WhatsApp group, I have just shared the PDF of the Sutra text. This is the Sutra text that I shared, also has Shufu's commentary. I initially thought that I had shared the text before, but that was with a different WhatsApp group. Actually, that's how this whole series of classes came about. I was sharing excerpts of the Medicine Master Sutra with a WhatsApp group, and from there came a request, and then this class began. So I thought I had shared it, yes, but I was mistaken. It wasn't with this group, so I just shared it out. So hopefully from now on everyone can read forward as we go along the text. And today we are going to the sutra. Okay, let me see. Vows. Page. If you look at the screen in front of you, you will see the sutra text. Yay. So I'd like to thank everyone for their patience, for bearing with me for the last 9 classes without us actually going into the sutra text. Hopefully there is a method to my madness. Okay. Just another sound test. Can everyone hear me okay? Let's see who responds.
Master can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put my palms together and recite the sutra, and I hope people can do that along with me. So we'll start with the title, Sutra of the Merit and Virtue of the Past Vows of Medicine Master Vaidurya Light Tathagata. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of scrolling. So in case you're wondering why I'm making the text so big, if you're looking at it on your laptop screen, it is because I know a lot of you or some of you are accessing are joining us on a mobile phone. So what I've done is I've tried to make sure that at least on a mobile phone it's still readable. It might be a bit excessive if you are sitting in front of your laptop or something, but I hope you can bear with it. Okay, so I'm going to start from the very top here. Thus I have heard, at one time the Bhagavan was traveling through various lands to teach living beings. He arrived at Vaisali, or the city of extensive adornments, and stayed beneath a tree from which music resounded. With him were 8,000 great bhikkhus and 36,000 bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, also kings, ministers, brahmans, lay disciples, gods, dragons, and the rest of the Eightfold Division, beings both human and non-human. The immeasurable great multitude respectfully surrounded him, and he spoke Dharma for them. Okay, moving on to the next paragraph. At that time, the Dharma Prince Manjushri, receiving the awesome inspiration of the Buddha, rose from his seat, bared one of his shoulders, knelt on his right knee, and inclining his head and placing his palms together, said to the Bhagavan, "World-honored one, we wish you would speak about such dharmas as the Buddha's names, the great vows they have made in the past, and their supreme merit and virtue, so that those who hear them will be rid of their karmic hindrances. This request is also for the sake of bringing benefit and joy to sentient beings in the Dharma image age." Okay, now let's move to the next page. Okay, we'll start at the top. The Buddha then praised the pure youth Manjushri. Good indeed, Manjushri. With great compassion, you now request that I speak about the Buddha's names and the merit and virtue of their past vows, for the sake of rescuing sentient beings who are bound up by karmic obstacles, and for the purpose of bringing benefit, peace, and joy to beings who live in the Dharma image age. Listen attentively to my words and reflect on them extremely well, for I will now answer you. Okay, I'm going to scroll up. Manjushri said, "Please do speak. We are glad to listen." The Buddha told Manjushri, "Passing from here to the east, beyond Buddha lands numerous as the sand grains in 10 Ganges rivers, is a world called pure Vaidurya. The Buddha there is named Medicine Master Vaidurya like Tathagata, of proper and equal enlightenment, perfect in understanding and practice, well gone one who understands the world, Supreme Lord, regulating hero, teacher of gods and humans, Buddha, Bhagavan." Manjushri, when that world-honored one, Medicine Master Vaidurya like Tathagata, was practicing the Bodhisattva path in the past, he made 12 great vows that enable all sentient beings to obtain what they seek. Okay. Maybe we'll stop here a bit, and it's time for me to make a short announcement. If there are people here who are kind of new to the Dharma, what I would really appreciate is if you come across a term or a word that you're not familiar with and that I don't explain, can you let me know in the chat box? Or I believe there are ways you can get attention, like raise up your hand or something, or just type it in the chat box, or just turn on your microphone and ask. Because I tend to I come across these terms all the time, and sometimes it doesn't occur to me that something might need to be explained or expanded. Okay, so if there's anything at all, please don't feel like you are interrupting the class. In fact, you will be doing everyone a huge favor by just putting on your microphone and just asking that question. All right, so I'm going to go back to the first page of the text. Okay, because I feel like the vows section, the vows can be a different section by itself. Oh, I went too far. Okay, sorry. Okay, this is what the first page looks like. Okay, I always found it very interesting. In this sutra, not so much, but in some other sutras that begin, they always list down the people who were actually in the assembly. In this sutra, they don't go into great detail, but some of the sutras, they have the names of all the different bodhisattvas. They have the names of the great monks like Sariputra, Ananda. They list them one by one. And in my first job, I was like a company, like a secretary, I was working in an association. I was handling different industry associations, like an association for aluminum manufacturers, an association for ceramic industries. And every time they met, I had to take down notes for the minutes of the meeting. And you have to list down who was there. Yeah, the name of the people, the date, and then the place and the time. And it's interesting when I started reading the sutras to see that, hey, the sutras have this. Yeah. And so one of the things that I first that first came to my attention was Bhagavan. What's Bhagavan? Bhagavan just means the Buddha. The Buddha has 10 different official names which will come true. Maybe I can do it right now. Yeah, there are 10 titles of a Buddha, and we read through them just now. If you were paying attention, if not, let me bring this up on screen and I'll put it right there. Okay, let me get this. Okay, here you go. These are the 10 titles of the Buddha. Okay, Tathagata, which means thus come one. One worthy of offerings, one of proper universal knowledge, one whose understanding and practice are complete, well-gone one who understands the world, supreme Lord, regulating hero, teachers of gods and humans. That's a very common one. Teachers of gods and humans. Buddha, which you all know, and world-honored one. According to Shufu, he says in the past, a Buddha has 100,000 titles. And then slowly people couldn't really remember, 100,000. So then it was reduced to 10,000. And then I guess people's mental capacity became less. And then from 10,000, it was reduced to 1,000. And from 1,000, it was reduced to 100. Until right now, when us in the Dhamma ending age, we have 10. Yeah. And I know I struggle to try to memorize all 10. If you ask me offhand, I would have a bit of a hard time trying to tell you all the 10. Yeah. So that's the 10 titles, and Bhagavan is one of them. And in this sutra was spoken at a place called Vaisali. I did some research because Vaisali is a place where the Buddha spoke quite a few sutras, and I have a picture of Vaisali. Okay, let me see. Where is my? Oh, where's my slide? Pictures where? Okay. All right. So what you're looking at is a map of India. Okay, that's where my cursor, my mouse arrow is circling. That's India. So north, let me see, east of India, this red dot in the, I think it's a district. It's okay. So there's a small town at this red dot which is called Patna, Patna, which I guess is in the state of Bihar. And Vaisali is 40 kilometers northwest of this red dot. So that, if I zoom in, let me try zooming in. Okay. So if I were to guess, it would be somewhere where my mouse pointer is. Yeah. That's northwest, about 40 kilometers, about 25 miles. So it's very near Kathmandu. If you look at the north, It's right up by the border. So that's where historians say Vaisali is. Okay, I'll close this window. Okay, and state beneath a tree from which music resounded. Okay, that's interesting. And then who were there with the Buddha at that time? Well, not just great bhikkhus and 36,000 bodhisattvas, mahasattvas. There were also kings, ministers, brahmins, lay disciples, gods, dragons, and the rest of the Eightfold Division, both human and non-human. Okay, so next we have Dhamma Prince Manjushri Bodhisattva, who's responsible for the sutra because he's the one that requests for the teachings. So of all the sutras that the Buddha spoke, what are sutras? Sutras are a collection of teachings spoken by the Buddha. That's what's known as a sutra.
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So I suppose the author of this photo would be Venerable Ananda. And am I right to say that he was able to see all these beings like gods and dragons because of his psychic eyes, his divine eyes?
I do not know. That's a really good question. Okay, let me go back to the front. And so what Brennan is asking is that this comes from Venerable Ananda. So the context to that is this. Venerable Ananda was the Buddha's attendant. So everywhere the Buddha went, Venerable Ananda was there all the time. And Venerable Ananda had this amazing memory where he could recollect every single word that the Buddha spoke. And on certain instances where he wasn't there when the Buddha spoke, I think if I'm not mistaken, when the Buddha came back, he would ask the Buddha, or the people who were with the Buddha would report back to Venerable Ananda about what they heard. So what happened was at was it the first council or the second council? After the Buddha's passing, all the senior disciples of the Buddha came together and they compiled all the teachings of the Buddha. And it was there that Venerable Ananda, with his amazing memory, he could recollect all the teachings and he spoke the teachings. And it is said that when he would assume the seat and he would speak, people saw him, he looked like the Buddha. He apparently had 30 of the 32 major hallmarks of the Buddha. What are the 32 major hallmarks? They are physical characteristics of that define what a fully enlightened person like the Buddha is. What is one of them? Okay, look at your screen. This is hallmark number 32, major hallmark. There are 32 major hallmarks and I think 80 or 88 minor characteristics. 32 is the cowl on the summit of his crown. Why am I showing you this? Because this has to do with the mantra Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master Buddha's mantra, if you've been listening to Rama Heng Sho, is also called a jewel for anointing the crown. And the crown is this, they also call it a flesh mount on the top of the Buddha. And this is connected to the number that you see on the top right hand side of the screen, 3,200 vows. That is connected to the 10,000 jeweled Buddha repentance held at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. So for the first 3,200 vows, every 100 vows is connected to a physical, major physical hallmark of the Buddha. Okay. So when Ananda would sit and speak, people got really confused. Some people thought, oh, the Buddha has come back to teach us. Some people thought, oh, Ananda is now a Buddha. So to avoid the confusion, every sutra, when the Buddha spoke, every sutra would begin with "Thus I have heard." So when people heard that, oh, okay, that's not the Buddha, that's Ananda recollecting what he heard. So when you have this, as Brandon pointed out, it's a pretty likely that yes, we heard it from Ananda, who heard it from the Buddha or from a source that was there when the Buddha spoke. As to whether Venerable Ananda could see gods, dragons, and the rest of the Eightfold Division, both beings human and non-human, like spiritual beings, I don't know. Maybe. I know that Ananda only became an arhat after the Buddha's passing, but what that has to do with his ability to see non-physical beings, I do not know. Yeah. All right. Maybe that's worth looking into. Do we have, let me see, any other questions? Okay, I'm experiencing voice on and off. Okay, whereas audio is stable for everyone. Okay, there's a question. Is Manjushri later becomes Manjushri Bodhisattva? He is Manjushri Bodhisattva, also referred to as Dhamma Prince. Yeah, but he's a Bodhisattva, Manjushri Bodhisattva. Okay, thank you for the question. Brandon, does that answer, or rather, I didn't really answer you?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't know. Yeah. Okay. What else? Let's go down and. Okay, this pose of Manjushri Bodhisattva knelt on his right knee, bearing one of his shoulders. If you've been to any, if you've seen a Dharma request in action, that's what happens. The person requesting the Dharma, if you're wearing a sash, you have, when you bear one of your shoulders, according to Indian customs, you bear your right shoulder. So by bearing the right shoulder is a sign of being respectful. And then you kneel on your right knee. I'm not sure about inclining his head. And then you place your palms together and then you request for the Dharma, which is exactly what Manjushri Bodhisattva just did. Okay. So I've highlighted the question he asked. He asked about, speak about such dharmas as the Buddha's names, the great vows they made in the past. I want to make a note of that. I want you all to be mindful of vows. Okay. And another interesting thing that I noted in this passage is he said, for beings in the Dharma image age. What is that? Okay. It is said that when the Buddha was around, it was the proper Dharma age. Okay, and that lasted for 500 years after the Buddha entered Nirvana. And then the next phase is the Dharma image age, which lasted for 1,000 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then the third age, which is what we are in right now, is called the Dharma ending age. Let me type that on screen. On screen notes. Okay. Proper Dharma age, Dharma image age, and Dharma ending age. Okay, you can go look it up, what these three mean. I'll share with you my own interpretation of these three. Okay, proper Dharma age during the Buddha's time, when the Buddha spoke in the sutras, sometimes they describe people getting enlightened on the spot. You just go and listen to the Buddha and bam, you just get enlightened on the spot. And sometimes hundreds of people, you know, the way I understand that is that people understood what practice was, and that they weren't really removed in terms of culture, in terms of language from the Buddha. Maybe I'll go through all three, and then that will become a bit more clear. So we had a proper Dhamma age 500 years after the Buddha, and then came the Dhamma image age, where people started looking towards symbols for the Dharma, images of the Buddhas. I believe like ceremonies became more prevalent during this time, worship of statues, and people, the form of the Dharma was needed to remind people what was the spirit of the Buddha's teachings and the practice. And then right now we have the Dhamma image age, which in my interpretation is we are left with the form, but not so much the spirit or the understanding of the practice. In my attempts to try to understand this, I looked at language as a symbol. Language is an expedient, is a symbol used to convey, or as an expedient used to convey what the Buddha was trying to teach us. He had to use sounds, language. So symbols, if you have read Western philosophy, there's, I think, Edward Said, who goes into symbology, if that's the right term, if I remember my readings correctly. Over time, symbols have their meanings altered and changed or lost entirely. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at Shakespearean English, there was a time when that was, I guess, pretty normal English. But after a few hundred years, I think, when was Shakespeare? I read Shakespeare, I have a hard time trying to figure out what he means, because the words are not the same anymore. Like, even when I was growing up, I remember listening to Michael Jackson when he became really popular. There was a song, I'm bad. He kept on singing I'm bad over and over again, and my parents, they couldn't understand why would he say he's bad. And I try to explain to my parents, no. When he says he's bad, it's a good thing. Like, he's cool, but he couldn't understand. Another way symbols change is, again, growing up, the words gay meant that you were happy. You come across a song and it had the word gay in it, it meant you were happy. Now, if you use the word gay, 99.99%, the people will take the meaning as a sexual preference. So symbols, like words, language, changes over time. So during the Buddha's time, it was said that the people there were a lot more, the intellect of people, they were a lot more sharp, like they just got it. So when the Buddha explained what practice was, people instantly got it. When you talk about precepts, they're like, oh, precepts, yeah, like how we talked about precepts in the first few classes. It's not just about yourself, but it's about your relationships and the people around you. The Buddha didn't have to explain all that in detail. People kind of understood. But then towards the Dhamma image age, people started forgetting about practice. So what you needed were what? Like, for example, like you come to the temple, and if the temple doesn't have any ceremonies, people start to not practice at all. So very, very wise people like Petrarch started putting together ceremonies, so that when you come to the monastery, you had the ceremonies, you had the images of the Buddhas, and when people saw like the image of the Buddha, they understood. They saw the Buddha as not something external that you worship externally, but a symbol to show you your own potential for awakening. So as they bow to the Buddha, they are not practicing external worship. There is devotional practice because you do recognize the kindness of your teacher. But instead, what they're also bowing to is their potential for awakening. They're respecting that just as much as they respect the Buddha. So when you have that kind of perspective, your attitude towards the practice is very, very different from, say a Christian approach to what Buddhism is, where you are looking at an external power for salvation. Okay, so that's like, so to me, that's the Dhamma image age. You needed symbols like this. You needed ceremonies where it brings you back to, it reminded you of the spirit of practice so you don't forget. And then now, the Dhamma ending age, we are so far removed from the Buddha's time, in language, in culture, in the way we relate to people. The human mind is so different that all we have left is the form. So we get really attached to the form without quite understanding the spirit of what the form is meant to achieve. So we talked about like the 8 precepts. For a long time, I just held the 8 precepts strictly in terms of the body, in terms of the form, but and I never understood that the 8 precepts were meant to create conditions for you to go and practice. That was the spirit of the 8 precepts. And then there's also, without going into today, like the Bodhisattva precepts. When I first took the Bodhisattva precepts, I was very rigid with the Bodhisattva precepts, not quite understanding that the Bodhisattva precepts was a way to tell me how a Bodhisattva would behave, and using the precepts as a mirror to highlight my own shortcomings of why it was not natural for me to hold the precept that way. For example, I'll just give one example that we talked about when we were in Malaysia, which is one of the Bodhisattva precepts is, if you are traveling, you don't leave, if one of your party gets sick, you don't leave the person behind. Okay? For a long time, I never understood that precept. I would think, if you go on a holiday and you're on a tour group, someone falls sick, it's like, okay, then, you don't wait, you go, you have to carry on, and too bad for the person that falls sick. That was my understanding. It was very selfish, it was very shallow, until in my attempts to try to understand, something came to me. What if it was my parents who was sick, or someone that was important to me that fell sick? Under those circumstances, I naturally would not even want to go ahead. I would stay back to take care of them, right? So it was only then that my understanding of the precept kind of increased a bit, like, oh, okay. And then I realized, oh, if I can do that for people I care for, what's wrong with me that I can't do that for anyone else? Why do I have a discrimination against people I care for and people I don't? Whereas a Bodhisattva does not. So by virtue of taking the Bodhisattva precepts, that would mean that I want to be a Bodhisattva. But before that, I didn't see it that way. I kind of understood intellectually, but not in a way that would affect, that had a transformative effect on me. Yeah. So in the Dhamma ending age, we are left with a lot of the forms. You go to the temples, you see all kinds of images, we see all kinds of mudras left by the Buddhas. We have all the sutras. But our interaction with them becomes really shallow instead of going in deep in a very transformative way. So that is my interpretation of the evolvement of our connection with the Dharma from the proper Dhamma age to the Dhamma image age, and then right now we're in the Dhamma ending age. So this sutra was requested by Manjushri Bodhisattva for people in the Dhamma image age. That's really interesting. I've not come across another sutra that actually had that I'm not saying I know all the sutras. I actually have read very, very limited sutras, but I'm just saying that that's the first time I actually see a sutra that someone requests for beings of a certain age of the Buddha. Okay, now I'm looking at the chat box and says, Master, I've been reflecting why the Dhamma has to be requested rather than the Buddha speaking out to teach us, since the Buddha is the knower of the world. Haha, that's a really good question. Is there a particular reason why the Dhamma has to be requested for the Buddha to teach sentient beings? Okay. Oh, and there's one more. Another interpretation of Dhamma image age is semblance Dhamma age. Okay. I think it might be the other way around. Dhamma. Okay. Okay, the question is, why has the Dhamma need to be requested before it can be spoken? Well, monks don't go out and speak the Dharma to people. In fact, one of our precepts is we don't casually speak the Dharma unless someone asks. And we have to use our wisdom it's not just someone casually asks a question and then we answer. We have to look at the motives and the intentions of the person who asks. So Buddhism is the only, or maybe not the only, but in Buddhism, we don't go and, what's that? I know the word, I don't know how to pronounce it. Proselytize? Someone help me out. Where you go and you go door to door and then you what's that word?
Proselytize.
Proselytize? Okay. Yes, that's the word. Okay, we don't do that. Why? Because if I don't believe, say I have no affinities with, say, Christianity, I don't want someone coming to me and trying to tell me about, have I heard the good news yet? I actually saw a sign. Have you heard the good news yet? It was in UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley is the University of Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley School, which is very near where we are in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. So I was walking towards them because I was really intrigued. Have you heard the good news? And I realized, oh, they're talking about Jesus. So in Buddhism, unless someone is sincere, you don't try to, I'm going to attempt pronunciation again. I wouldn't even say. We don't preach. Yeah, I'll use the word. That word. It's a lot easier. We don't preach because if you don't have affinities with that person, you turn them away. You, instead of doing good, you are actually harming their affinities with the Dharma. So affinities is a very important theme in Buddhism. So I hope that answers your question. So every single sutra that the Buddha spoke has been requested except for one. Okay, so there is an exception to that. And what is that exception? That's the Amitabha Sutra. Because at that time, I guess the Buddha was teaching all the teachings of the Pali Canon, where you had to really understand how to regulate your body, your mind, and your speech, and as a way to end suffering. And no one knew that there was something called the Pure Land practice, Amitabha's Pure Land. And the Buddha knew that. So to answer your question, Lin, yes. So the Buddha is the knower of the world. Yes, he knew that. He knew that people didn't have the understanding to request for such an amazing teaching like the Pure Land method, where you could rely on Amitabha's vows to get to the Pure Land. So the Amitabha Sutra is the only sutra that the Buddha spoke without being requested. Okay. Let me see. Referring to the phrase "when they hear," does "hear" mean in its more simple definition or profound hearing you talked about last time? I don't know. I guess it depends on the person in that audience. If it was me in the audience, it would be hearing as in through the ear faculty. But for the the great bodhisattvas, they would have a different definition of what hearing is. So I think it depends on your potential, what hearing would mean. Yeah, but just knowing about the possibility of what hear could mean is really good, because then the more you understand about the more you try to go beyond the language or the symbol, the closer we get to the proper Dharma age, at least in terms of understanding. Then we put it into practice. Okay, let me see. Okay, Ahmed has kindly typed it out. Proselytize. Okay, I have a big tongue. It's hard to talk. Okay, Dhamma Master, what about the Heart Sutra? It was spoken by Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva to Shariputra. But was the sutra requested? Offhand, I don't know. That's something I need to investigate. And then Lin says, does this mean we should not share the Buddha teaching with even family members unless they ask? That's a really good question. Should we share unless they ask? In one thing about the teachings that I've come to appreciate and observe in living in a monastery and knowing so many families that are connected to the Dharma, is that talking doesn't really help. If you want to say things to help your family members, it doesn't really work. Sometimes usually backfires, unless they're already receptive. But if they are, then you wouldn't really have that question anyway. What always works is showing the example. For example, like I know Ravan Hungsha talks about, if you are a parent, you show how the Dharma has helped you develop patience, develop understanding, loving kindness, and that's how you can transform your partner or your children. You can say how good the Dharma is all you want, but if your behavior does not reflect the improvement of the Dharma, then basically it just makes you a hypocrite. And people can spot a hypocrite from a mile away. So in Buddhism, the only thing I've seen that actually has worked is changing your behavior according to the teachings. So you have to show by example rather than propagate. What's that word again? Not proselytize, but preach. You can't preach. Yeah, you have to show. Okay. Okay, so I have some notes. Vaisali is a town approximately 25 miles away from the northwest of modern-day Patna. Let me see if there's anything interesting. The Buddha first visited the city in the 5th year after his enlightenment and spent his last rains retreat in the vicinity of Vaisali. Okay, all this I can send to you guys on WhatsApp for you to read. Okay. Oh, it's almost time. 45 minutes go away really quickly for Sutra lecture. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, Ru Chang has a remark. He said it depends on what's judgment on the situation. If you talk to them, then they hear the Dharma and plant good seeds. If you know they will react negatively, then you would keep quiet. Yep. So how monks go is, like I said, we don't speak unless requested, and even if requested, we have to judge to see the sincerity, because if the heart is not there, then very seldom the other party would listen. They might be very polite to you, but they probably it wouldn't be as useful as you think. So next class, we'll go into what Shifu has to say about what a sutra is. And for those of you who join us late and you are part of the WhatsApp group, I have sent out a copy of the sutra together with Shifu's commentary. Please read ahead and come back with questions. And hopefully in the next class, we'll go towards all the different names of not the titles, but the other names of Medicine Master Buddha, and I'll show some pictures of Vaidurya. And I have some really good news just before we do dedication of merit. Okay, if you look at your screen, you'll see a children's book called Guan Yin, the Buddha's Helper. This book was one of many children's books that it was written by Jinro Shi, Bhikshuni Jinro, and Terry Nicholson, who have amazingly long history with Shufu and City of 10,000 Buddhas, and illustrated by the Master Heng Ching. And this book just won this award called the Nautilus Book Awards winner. Okay, what is that? Let me show you. Okay, I don't have the Nautilus website, but if you need to, if you're looking for children's books, go to this website, buddhismforkids.net. I will put it on the document. We have 6 new Buddhist books for children, and then you click there, and then this website promotes all the books that Jinro Shi has helped bring to life. Okay, on screen notes. Oh. Okay. http buddhismforkids.net. All right. Okay. PowerPoint. Dedication of merit. Okay, I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting your palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us today. Also, next class, I will show you some examples of symbols in Buddhism and how we can decode those symbols and get back to hopefully the proper Dhamma age. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.